Today we're going to be focusing on beef stroganoff. This recipe was inspired originally by my grandmother, so it's been passed down through my Midwestern family. I'm going to be taking her recipe and then giving it a couple little spins on it and then adding a little bit of my own flavor to it to update the classic Midwestern sour cream, meat and potatoes kind of deal, to give it a little bit more depth of flavor. Super simple recipe. It can take anywhere between an hour and 3 hours depending on the kind of meat you get or the kind of simmering that you want to do. It's all really dependent on you. I will say, the longer you simmer your meat, the more rich and tender and well-developed some of the flavors can really come out. So keep that in mind depending on how long you want to make this. So without me rambling on anymore, we're going to get directly to this. Getting right down to this. The first thing you'll want to do is pat dry your beef with a few paper towels and season both sides with a bit of salt and pepper. Really make sure that you rub that in well, because this will help the meat develop a delicious sear the more you dry it out. In terms of the kind of beef that you want to buy for this dish, it's really all up to your taste and your budget. For me personally, I went with about 2 pounds of chuck steak because it typically airs on the cheaper side. Because I went with a stew beef, it'll take me a bit longer to simmer the beef and let it really relax in the end. But with the right care, we can make this cheap cut taste delicious. Onions are straightforward as always. Dice a whole sweet or yellow onion and set aside in a prep cup. Next are going to be the mushrooms, which if you don't like mushrooms, I'm sorry, but you're simply wrong. These white fungi are super absorbent down the line and will soak up a good bit of the sauce that we make. Just make sure to wash off any leftover dirt from the farm and dry them out really quick with your nearest kitchen towel. And now, even though mushrooms are something to be feared, they still need to be towel dried or they'll lose their texture. Carefully remove the stems without applying too much pressure. Oof, too much pressure. We're separating these because the fibrous difference between the two parts of the mushrooms makes the stems take a bit longer to cook through. As you're going about slicing your mushroom caps, try and shoot for about 1/8 of an inch thick slices, as you can see here. Remember that since these guys are mostly water, they're going to shrink considerably while cooking. For the stems, aim for the same thickness, and once you've made it through, set aside in your prep cup. And that's all there is to it for the sauté veggies and their prep work. Now let's focus on cutting this chuck steak into bite-sized pieces. To maximize the tenderness of the meat, cut across the grain. Wait, let me move this so you can see better. You may have a bit of resistance while slicing through some of the fatty edge, but that's alright. Just take your time to cut the slab into individual pieces about 1 inch thick. The advantage of cutting across the grain is that it gives you shorter muscle fibers in the end. Similar to fiberglass epoxy composite materials, the longer the fibers, the tougher the piece. Use physics to your advantage and let the knife do the work of chewing. Once you've sliced all your steaks into bits, head on over to the stovetop where we've got a large sauté pan and a medium-high heat. Drop in about 2 tablespoons of butter and let that melt down to coat the bottom of the pan. Additionally, drop a tablespoon of better than bouillon soup base into 2 to 3 cups of water to prep the broth we'll eventually need. Fry your steaks in batches to prevent crowding in the pan and stir infrequently so you can get this sort of sizzling. Now as your steak bits are crisping up, you'll notice that a dark brown residue is building on the base of the pan. This is known as the fond, and we're going to be using our sturdiest wooden spoon to scrape this from the bottom to recycle the flavors into our sauce. Now that you got your steaks nice and crispy, put the first batch to the side in a bowl. Second batch, exactly the same as the first. If you're worried about excessive stickage with the second batch, you can always throw in a smidgen of butter more, but you'll probably be fine just as is. From here on out, we're sauteing and then making our sauce. Using the same pan with a healthy amount of fond, drop in 2 tablespoons of garlic as well as your mushroom stems and the sliced onions. Did I mention this was a Midwestern dish? Toss in a tablespoon more of butter and use that excess fat to help scrape away the fond from the bottom of the pot. This will help create the base that will stick to the mushrooms and onions in the long run, and really help take that sauce to the next level. Y'all probably think this is a lot of butter, but I promise you the original recipe had almost double the amount. Don't forget the salt and pepper since we're sauteing. Mix that around and keep that on a medium-high heat for about 3 minutes or so before tossing in your sliced mushroom caps. Let that cook down for the next 5 minutes, or until the mushroom caps have given up a considerable amount of their water. At this point, you'll want to add 2 cups of broth to your pan and listen to the sizzling. So now with your broth added to the pan, and with it back up to temperature, you'll want to reintroduce your beef. And since you have a bit left over, you might as well just add enough broth to cover the beef. It'll simmer down in the end. Cover and let come to a boil before layering in our seasonings. Don't be shy with the paprika. Cover the top layer fairly well. However, be sure to add only 2 tablespoons of an all-purpose vinegar of your choice. And seriously, don't go overboard because you'll definitely be able to tell if you have too much rice wine vinegar. Its purpose here is to be just a bit of an aftertaste, as well as cut through all of the richness of the dairy products in the dish. Cover the pan, bring back to a boil, and then drop the temp down to medium to aim for a gentle simmer for the next half hour or however long you need to simmer your beef. Towards the end of the simmer, you'll want to take care of the noodles, which for this I'm going to be using Amish egg noodles because that's what my mom used to use. And I've been reading online that there's this fun trick to see when your noodles are done by throwing them against the wall to see if they stick, so I guess let's try it out. You don't throw them into your mouth. You take a bite of it. You don't actually throw it against the wall, that's weird. Stop throwing noodles against walls. But now actually after cooking them to a nice al dente, simply drain them and set them aside before working on some steamed veggies, which can easily be done on the stovetop, in the microwave, or in a rice cooker if you're feeling fancy. How about we check on the beef? See how much the mixture has reduced at this point? We've got a hugely flavorful mixture going, but to really seal in the Midwestern creaminess, we're gonna add between 4 and 8 ounces of sour cream to really boost the richness of the dish. And it's really important that you do not let this boil at this point once you've added the sour cream. Drop the temp of the burner down to a low, or a 1 to 3 setting, and let that sour cream heat up nice and easily. If you do, you'll get an incredibly rich, creamy, ever so slightly spicy sauce for your stroganoff. It's not an incredibly complex dish, but it is a favorite. And I mean, that's all there is to it. From here on out, you'll just place a layer of your noodles in the base of the bowl, bring on over your stroganoff, and scoop a serving or so for yourself, and make sure to get an extra little bit of that sauce because it seriously is the best part. And the mushrooms too are also great because they act like little sponges and soak up all the flavor of the other ingredients. From there, place your steamed veggies on the side to add a bit of color and variety to the meal. And lastly, don't forget to garnish with a bit of parsley. And I could not recommend enough you all trying to make this yourself. If you do, make sure to send me a picture of it on Instagram. Leave a comment below if you have any recommendations for future episodes, and don't forget to like and subscribe for future creations that are sure to please without breaking the budget.